Warning, this podcast contains blasphemy, heresy, and profanity. Proceed at your own risk.
Don't say no prayers for me, 'cause I'm exactly where I want to be. Yeah, I'm a sinner through and through, and I'll be waiting in hell for you.
From Purgatory, Pennsylvania.
From Inferno, Ohio.
I'm Sam.
I'm Dan.
And this is The Skeptical Satanist.
On this week's episode, Planned Parenthood is providing service to our trans friends. Conservatives would rather be crucified than support gay rights, and we'll tell you where to go for the nails. But first, Dan had a chance to sit down with our friend Ash. Ash is one of the chapter heads of the Satanic Temple, West Virginia. So without further delay, let me hand it over to Dan.
Okay, I'm here with Ash, and I thought I might ask you about your background some. How did Christianity impact you?
Well, that's a very long story, but I'll try to give the teal deer on it. My mom, we no longer have a relationship, but is somebody who'd get, like, religiously preoccupied, kind of church hop. And I generally came from a pretty conservative background. Not, like, fundamentalist or anything, but very Stepford wifey. Upper middle class, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Wasn't quite, not bigoted in the traditional sense of the word, because there was some support, it was very ambivalent. But very early on, I got to see a lot of the hypocrisy. It's not that made me not believe, but being young and on the spectrum, as a kid who loves science, something isn't quite adding up about a guy who raises from the dead. Then again, I was the kid who was 5, said Santa Claus isn't real, and a bunch of kids, cried. I'm like, Mom, that's stupid. But none of it ever made sense to me. Were
there a lot of churches nearby?
Oh, yeah. I was actually nearly born in a megachurch on Easter Sunday, 1993, prematurely, during an altar call.
Oh, wow.
I was called Heathen Child for a reason. I really wish I was making that shit up. I didn't know that until recently. Just kind of started screeching at the altar. I don't know, they managed to push me back in somehow. Came out like a month later. The Antichrist has spawned.
What is that with megachurch?
I know it depends. A lot of them are relatively...
denomination or whatever.
Oh yeah, a lot of them are seeker-friendly. Maybe, I've seen some Baptist ones, but it depends on what kind of flavor of Baptist.
That's the ones I've seen.
Because you've got, the New Independent Fundamental Baptist, which is, the Steven Anderson cult. Yeah. You've got IFBs. There's so much to choose from. Basically, just any... I don't know. You've got, the Ted Haggards and Joel Osteens, a lot of prosperity gospel ones.
So, when did you actually transition into Satanism? I mean, from Christianity, it seems like a leap.
Oh yeah, I never really fully identified as a Christian. I dabbled in it a little, but it's kind of I don't know, I'm just gonna say this from experience. Me and Christianity, I can proclaim it till the hills come home, but do I really have a heart-on for it, so to speak? It's yep, okay, awesome, really bad sex, you're playing an act. Just oh god, I hate myself right after. Now you can go through the motions, it doesn't mean you believe, or fully accept it with, further and conviction. I'm just what the hell am I doing? A lot of social pressure. Eventually I just admitted, I really don't like this, but I like being religious. Symbolism, ritual, it's all very fun. I enjoy it, and for a long time I thought Christianity was the only option. I was born in Lexington and grew up in Dallas. You didn't really see anybody else. Hell, I didn't even know what Islam was till 2001, because I was born in the 90s. But yeah, I started dabbling with, witchcraft, like most goth kids really kind of do. I'm not trying to stereotype guys, but let's be honest, it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
If you're pushed away from mainstream religion long enough, you're going to look at other shit.
Yeah.
I couldn't fully really bring myself to believe in rituals or the supernatural, because as screws start turning up there, it's like, well, how the hell does sprinkling this water under a new moon make this happen? Like, how does this work scientifically? So I didn't really get it. Eventually just, like, admit that I'm an atheist and, like, look, you don't believe any of this stuff, do you? It's just like, God, I wish there was atheism in religion. Stumbles upon the Satanic Bible. Well, I'm curious, because that's kind of where a lot of people do start. And this was circa 2012 when I picked it up. Right, I mean, TST wasn't a thing when I was, like, in high school, middle school. It wasn't a thing to be explored back then, so I had very limited options. But I'm like, holy shit, this does make sense to me. Yeah, I'm a Satanist. Didn't want to admit it for a while, and now I'm out loud and proud. So it was just, it's not that I ever believed in theism. It's just like, it's like figuring out you're gay or a lesbian for the first time. It just clicks when you finally do it.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be vulgar, but it's very similar. You know what works.
So you're transsexual.
Mm-hmm.
How long have you been transitioning, or I don't know exactly if that's the right terminology.
That's okay. I'm very understanding and lenient in regards to terminology. As I prefer transgender, but I mean, transsexual's a little outdated, but I'll use it occasionally. I don't really have a preference. That's just me personally. I can't speak for everyone else, but I've actually been a lifelong case of gender dysphoria. Like 2 to 4, parents start noticing something's wrong. Didn't get formally diagnosed till like 8. When it was still gender identity disorder. Wasn't really reacted too well. You were degenerate and a heathen and broken and perverse. I'm like an 8 to 10-year-old dude. I'm just like, what the hell about me pissing in the toilet is like perverse to you people? You're the ones thinking about my genitals. But I've been formally transitioning medically since I actually started hormones in like July this year. But I finally accepted it's lifelong. It's not going away, and I don't regret it at all. I'm a million times happier.
So, did this affect things with the people in the church that you knew?
Me being transgender, it was mostly, like, church was an off and on thing growing up. Like, she'd have a manic episode, and then eventually, like...
So you never really got to know the people there too much? Or...
The people I did get to know really harassed my siblings for a while. Yeah. Like, creeping on them, what's wrong with your sister? Asking about me. It was mostly the school board and the PTA mommies I had issue with. Like, you know, the Karen, like, anti-vax types before anti-vax was a thing. Karens have been around since the dawn of time.
Yeah.
But honestly, it just caused more issues with an uppity-ass school board than anything else. Threatened me with expulsion if I didn't come to school in pink on picture day. So my parents threw out everything I had and sent me to school in limited 2 and called it a cure. Of course, I dipped right into the black eyeliner right after, because that's the only context I could ever exist masculinely in. Gotta love the 2000s.
Yeah.
Nobody knew what being transgender meant. All they know is that there's this weird fucking kid pissing in the boys' room. I'm just like...
Are you still doing a vlog, or...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I do blog on Facebook, because honestly, it's just a habit and a hobby of mine. I don't know, I just started posting about my weird life one day, and people started following. Give them what they want. Are you not entertained? But yeah, honestly, it just keeps me from being lonely. Like, I mean, it gets lonely as I feel like that. I always think of that scene from, I forget what the movie is. It's like, my wife is a Satan-worshipping transsexual. Just like, where else am I gonna tell my story?
Yeah.
Fucking social media. So I run a YouTube channel. I haven't been uploading as much as I'd like to, because a lot going on in my personal life, but I generally just kind of follow my life around with a camera and a Facebook page, because I really wanted to be a documentary filmmaker when I grew up, and now it's at my fingertips and there's an app for that. I don't know. people seem to like it, so I just kind of do it.
So, you're pretty well out about being TST.
Oh, yeah.
Now and everything, right?
Oh, yeah.
How did your family not take that?
Oh, they don't care. I've been so deep down the rabbit hole at this point. It's like they've known I've been... I don't know, I'm basically the human version of the aristocrats joke to them. I highly suggest you guys Google that. The Gilbert Gottfried one. It's vulgar, but content warning, I guess. I don't know.
We have that on this.
Oh, really?
On this podcast.
I don't know. At this point, it's just like nothing shocks them. Like, I don't have a relationship with a lot of my family.
Yeah.
But the people I do, I feel like they just eat the popcorn and watch.
Yeah.
They just want to see this train crash. But they don't really have an opinion on TST. They're just like, you do you, boo.
How did you become interested in being the chapter head for TST? Are you able to tell about that a little?
I can talk about it a little. I don't want to name drops or tell the whole story or anything like that. It kind of fell into my lap, and I've been out about my Satanism for a long time, and somebody said that I seem like the most mature Satanist they knew, and the most out when they had to step out of a picture for a long time to deal with personal issues. So, I was a part of the group on Facebook because I enjoy TST, and I always thought it was a great organization. But some have greatness thrust upon them. Saying that sarcastically, but it's something that happened and something I've run in with. I didn't really pursue it.
Yeah.
I was just a good fit for the job, I guess.
So, what is TST doing for your community?
Oh, well, I can't go in...
What have you guys been working on?
Ooh, some really big things, actually. I can't give it all away yet, because there's some things that are pending. But we're planning on a lot of academic events, actually, because we have a local university, Marshall University, that I frequently get invited to do talks on the occult and Satanism at, whether it be a class or audience of 200 people. It's actually been really well received there. Like, oh yeah, let's go listen to the Satanists. So I actually have a pretty good relationship with, the campus ministries, so we're planning on some, academic events, some meet and greets, interfaith dialogue. We've been doing a Menstruating for Satan drive in our community, and I actually have a giant thing of, menstrual pads in the car, just box after box. We actually partnered with a local church on it, or they offered to contribute because they're allies.
That's
a Christian church. I'm not going to name drop them because I don't want them to get threatened.
No.
But
I think that's great.
They were like, oh yeah, yay, TST!
Awesome.
So that's been going really well, and we're looking at other events. Can't name drop them yet.
Yeah.
But we're probably going to do some stuff for the holidays as well, for people who don't have a place to go. So we're excited about all that.
Sounds great. Well, that's about all I have.
Okay. It's been great talking to you, and I really appreciate being on the show. Thank you, Skeptical Satanist, right?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much.
We'll be back with Ash a little later in the show to talk more about Satanism, ritual, and symbolism. But first, Dan's back to talk about some news items.
So, we got some good news for once.
Yeah?
Tell me about it.
Planned Parenthood of New York City expands access to gender-affirming hormone therapy across NYC. Gender-affirming hormone therapy, which includes prescriptions for testosterone, estrogen, and testosterone blockers, helps affirm a patient's gender identity, decreases gender dysphoria, and enhances a patient's quality of life.
That's amazing. And
that is.
And another reason why the right-wing assholes are going to want to fight against Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I know there are certain clinics that do specialize in this. There is definitely one, there's one up in Pittsburgh. the name escapes me right now, but a lot of them, just cater strictly to the, not strictly, but, primarily to the LGBT community. I think a lot of them started off as HIV/AIDS clinics, and at least this one did, and then they've expanded because, honestly, just because they're places that are welcoming to, welcoming and affirming to HIV/AIDS patients to start with, and just became welcoming. It's like, this is a safe place for LGBT people to go. And it's great that, that Planned Parenthood is doing this as well. For me, like, this is another reason why we should support this organization. And unfortunately, for the religious whack jobs, it's going to end up being another reason why they're going to demonize them.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much more they can demonize them off of their lack of evidence.
Oh, of course.
Here's Old Book. Go buy Old Book.
Old Book says, and honestly, Old Book doesn't even say that.
No, in fact, there's actually a verse about the bitter waters. I believe it was supposed to be given to women that were out of wedlock, possibly. It made it sound an awful lot like abortion.
The Bible does, at least in the Old Testament, it does spell out exactly how to, induce an abortion.
See, I've also wondered about, on that topic of things, whenever there's a miscarriage, is that God's little abortion?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or what the fuck happened there? Was that not a life all of a sudden?
No, that was God's abortion. It's the same thing as if a baby dies, it was God's will.
It's okay if God kills the baby.
Yeah, exactly. If the woman was suspected of adultery, the Bible does prescribe ways for...
Well, it's usually as long as somebody gets paid off, I believe. Or the woman gets stoned out in the street or whatever.
They tried to drag me into the church. They tried to make me drink the holy water. But it was bitter on my lips. It burned my fingertips. I'd rather choke and die of thirst. Don't say no.
This might be good news if we let things follow through to their obvious conclusion. This comes from churchandstate.org. Republican governor. Conservatives are ready to be crucified to oppose gay rights. This says, the battle for true equality for the LGBT community is far from over. We've essentially reached the last stages where Republicans are not just mounting petty, last-ditch efforts to continue to cling to their outdated bigotry. Well, there's still plenty of work left to be done. The writing is on the wall, and the Republicans have lost the fight. And this comes from Mississippi Governor Phil Bryant. He was honored by the hate group Family Research Council with their first ever Samuel Adams Religious Freedom Award for signing his state's anti-LGBT bill.
Like the beer?
Yeah, well, actually, but like the beer, but Samuel Adams was also he was famous from Boston. I think he's considered one of the founding fathers. I think he signed the Declaration, but not the Constitution. I have to actually look up exactly who Adams was. But okay, during Bryant's acceptance speech, he tried to blame secular progressives who realized that this country is ruled by the Constitution and not the Bible for trying to put pressure on him not to sign a law that blatantly violates the constitutional rights of LGBT Americans. Quote, "They don't know us very well, do they? They don't know that Christians have been persecuted throughout the ages. They don't know that if it takes crucifixion, we will stand in line before abandoning our faith and our belief in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So we are going to stand. Now is the time, and this is the place." So he's basically saying that rather than accept LGBT people, they would rather be crucified. We're not saying that they should be crucified. We are not saying that they should be crucified. But if you're looking for hammers and nails, your local Lowe's and Home Depot. Don't go to Lowe's. Don't go to Home Depot. Don't get the nails. I mean, this is the whole false victimization. This is the people in power playing the fucking victim.
Yeah.
They don't understand that equality isn't a fucking pie. Somebody gets a bigger piece, you don't get less.
I'm okay with sharing my pie with other people. I don't get the big deal with that.
But as far as rights are concerned, I don't lose rights when other people gain them. And as a matter of fact, in a lot of ways, I gain them in ways that I didn't realize that I didn't have them.
Yeah.
For example, when I was with my former partner, when I lived in Oregon, and this was before gay marriage was fully legalized pretty much anywhere. But one of the first steps was, when they started to recognize non-traditional partnerships would allow people that weren't married to be on your insurance. And that directly came from the struggle for same-sex couples to have their partnerships recognized. And this is, my rights and my freedoms were expanded from other people's rights and freedoms being expanded. I have never seen a case where my rights and freedoms are infringed upon. But I can't think of a single example but how my rights and freedoms are infringed upon by other people's rights and freedoms being expanded. Other than the, quote, right to discriminate. And that's not a fucking
This is Dan, and I'm here with Ash Shade.
I am the co-chapter head for the Satanic Temple, West Virginia.
So, is this religion based on faith like other religions?
Honestly, I'm speaking as an individual Satanist when I talk about all this. I'm not speaking on behalf of TST necessarily. But personally, based on everything I know about the Satanic Temple and everything we do as an organization, I would say that no. To me, faith, and what that means, is a positive assertion in something without evidence. Faith to me isn't a virtue, as it isn't to many Satanists. To me, faith is ultimately gullibility in the traditional sense of the word and the definition. A lot of people use it as fancy tattoo or some very vague platitude that means something positive, but they can't really put their finger on it. So, my religion and my practice is not based on faith. It's based on the here, the now, the empirical, and the observable, in accordance with the Satanic Temple stating that belief should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world, and that one should take care to never distort scientific facts to fit anyone's specific beliefs. To me, Satanism is an acceptance of reality, and enjoying religion as as many people do. I don't believe that the enjoyment of religion should belong to the theist, to the supernaturalist, and people who believe in things unseen. The same amount of awe and wonder somebody has during an evangelical church service or speaking in tongues or anything else, I can get that exact same thing looking at a science textbook or doing good unto my fellow man or just engaging in symbolism, religious behaviors and enjoying symbolism as much as any Christian does. However, I don't feel like that invalidates my religion at all. Because, if faith is ultimately a belief in the supernatural, things unseen, and that religion's all about awe, wonder, seeing beauty in the universe, why do I need to have faith in the supernatural and things I can't prove whatsoever in order to be religious? There are plenty of religious people that are de facto atheists. There are Buddhists out there that don't believe in a literal God. Plenty of other sects, certain aspects of Judaism too. So, no, my Satanism isn't based on faith. I can't speak for literally everybody under the sun, but I don't require a belief in anything supernatural in order to get that same enjoyment out of religious behaviors. Hope that makes some sense.
Good, I think so. So, the Satanism, does it require rituals or worship then? You spoke a little bit about that.
Well, I'll start out with the worship question first. Atheistic Satanism, as it's most commonly known, we're not going to talk about spiritual Satanism, theistic Satanism. I can't do the topic as the justice that it needs. I think it's nonsensical, like most religions. I don't believe that Satan as he has existed in literature, and everything that's been said about him would ever require anybody to worship him. That is God's territory. And ultimately, it's kind of a sign of narcissism. Who demands the creatures that it creates to bow down and kiss ass? The requirement that any deity should be worshipped invalidates them from any sort of worship to me. So, no, because I don't believe in the supernatural, there's nothing there to worship. But if we're going to take, like, worship out of context or get into some really abstract definition, I worship myself, I worship life, and I perform, air quotes, human sacrifice, aka sacrificing my daily life and actions to the tenets of my beliefs. It's not stab somebody through the heart necessarily, I'm being purely metaphorical here. I sacrifice my life for the greater good and for my own well-being. I believe in dedication, sacrifice, and not literally. Don't you dare take this out of context, you guys. Silly listeners. I'm messing. But no, I don't believe that worship is required. I mean, some people might have a different definition of worship, but I just don't think almost every Satanist I personally know does not worship anything.
So, what about the rituals?
Rituals? Well, like most other religions, rituals are, well, they're psychodramas. They're fun. It's not that you're conjuring up some demon, some spirit, doing bizarre delusional things or speaking in tongues, anything else like that. Ritual serves a purpose. It serves the needs and wants of the self. It brings people together. It incites awe and wonder, and reinforces beliefs using exploiting perfectly natural human tendencies. People love ritual. I mean, why do people sit for hours at a time at Mass with incense and chanting, and drinking the blood of a deity? Because it makes them feel something. Just because I'm an atheist and I prefer to be logical and rational does not mean that I have to excuse this part of my humanity. To me, being ritualistic is a part of being human, and I see no reason to shun that in my practice. So we have things like defiance rituals, unbaptisms. We perform things that mean a lot to the person. The black cloaks, everything else, it's aesthetic, really. I mean, it's based out of many legends about Satanists, starting from the medieval era up to the Satanic Panic. I'm just running with it, so to speak. I mean, hell, who can go wrong with a fancy velvet cloak and some cool animal skulls?
Aaron Rawls made a living off of it. So.
I love Aaron. I actually got to meet him at Marshall University back in September. He signed my book and bought me a beer, and I didn't want to wash that hand for a week. I'm sorry, I really like YouTube atheists.
I do too. So what's the point of Baphomet? If you guys aren't in worship, then what's Baphomet?
Oh, well, I mean,
therefore,
Baphomet, as a symbol and as a deity, has a long, long history, going way back to the medieval era, the Knights Templar, Levi, etc. I can't go into all of it because I'm not a historian, and I don't feel like I could do that justice. But Baphomet kind of goes back to the need for ritual, for symbols, for things that are above us, so to speak. It's not that we worship a character of Baphomet or Satan or anything else. The symbol stands for a lot of different things to a lot of different people, one of which being duality, nature, completeness, as above, so below, kind of totality, whether it be good or bad, hell, heaven, etc. If you look at the symbols on Baphomet, there's the male and the female, the sea and the animal, earth and sky, it's got a very, very long, complex history, and it's a symbol that speaks to me as a Satanist. Because ultimately, it kind of goes back to my problem with white light religions. I'm sorry if I'm rambling a little bit.
You're fine.
A lot of the right-hand path religions, say maybe Christianity, certain aspects of Islam even, there is a worship of the light, so to speak, or submission. A god that is commands and demands. There's a complete shunning of anything called sinful, haram. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. I'm so sorry, Middle Eastern listeners. Anything that is the dark, the animal side of people. To me, Baphomet and ultimately Satanism means an acceptance of my humanity. Whether that be being a sinner, partaking in whether it be consensual sex or a little bit too much wine, good food, loving my neighbors, I don't feel like I need to shun that part of myself to be a good person. So while a lot of I almost said right-wingers, we ain't going to talk about that. A lot of right-hand path religions are all love and light, but I don't feel that paints a great picture of life or the human experience. To me, Baphomet, as a symbol, and this is just my own opinion, the as above, so below aspect, and it's an acceptance of life, darkness, life, death, a completeness. Accepting life as it is. That's kind of my own abstract interpretation of it, so I know some people will disagree with me on that, but...
Seems very artistic.
Oh yeah, definitely. As somebody who has been on the verge of death before, having that experience and accepting unpleasant truths, whether they be in my favor or not, it paints a complete picture of life, meaning I can make more rational decisions if I have a whole picture. Those who shun death under the rug or sin, sexuality, anything that humanity is deemed taboo, tend to make really poor judgments, whether they be in, let's say, gay marriage, abortion rights, etc. Ultimately, if you're only looking at the whole love and light, the idealism, you're not going to have a great view of life. So, symbols are kind of going back to the original question before I ramble and take you on a rabbit trail. I think that humanity needs symbols, whether it be a crucifix, Baphomet, the sitting Buddha statue. Symbols have been there since humanity has been a thing. Humanity's been creating religions, creating things that mean something greater than themselves. To me, that's a part of being human. So it's not that I worship Baphomet, it's a symbol that inspires me in some way. As with many other Satanists, I can't speak for everybody, but as somebody looking to make the most rational choices in their life, and to do the best of what I can and accept reality, whether it be scientific fact, the fact that I'm going to die, making good medical decisions for myself because I'm trans. Baphomet is looking at that symbol, putting it on my neck every morning when I wake up. It's not just a symbol of defiance and subversiveness, it's completeness. It's an acknowledgement of reality to me. So I think that symbols are natural, and I love using them. It's religion's fun. Yeah. It just is.
The tenets. Do you have a favorite tenet? Do you have one that stands out?
Yeah, my personal favorite tenet kind of is relevant to me as somebody who plans on contributing to psychological research. Recently got my MA in Psych, and I'm a teacher in my free time as a hobby. So the one stating that beliefs should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world is the one I use the most. So that is probably the most relevant one. All of them are, relevant and useful, and I love all of them, but that one just sticks out to me the most, to be honest.
Thanks again to Ash for joining us this week. He's a really interesting guy, and we hope to have him back again real soon. For Dan, I am Sam. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on The Skeptical Satanist.
Views expressed on this show belong solely to ourselves and don't represent those of the Satanic Temple or any other organization. If you want to talk to us, you can send us a message on Facebook, send us an email at skepticalsatanist@gmail.com, or leave a voicemail at 412-282-3522. Our artwork was provided by Jamie Koptic. You can find her original work at jamiekoptic.weebly.com. Music by the Bridge City Sinners and used by permission. You'll find them on Facebook or at flailrecords.com. Thanks for listening. Hail Satan and hail you.
Don't say no prayers for me, 'cause I'm exactly where I want to be. Yeah, I'm a sinner through and through, and I'll be waiting.